Feeling overwhelmed by the challenges of being a single parent? You are not alone. Welcome to Single Parent Reset, the podcast that helps you navigate the ups and downs of single parenthood and find the balance that you deserve. Whether you're a single parent, co-parent or solo parent, this is the show for you. I'm Orla and I'm a life coach for single parents and a single parent myself. I know how hard it can be, but I believe every single parent has the strength to create a life that they are proud of. For more information about me and the work that I do, please visit my website solascoaching.com. That is SOLAS coaching.com. In each episode of this podcast, we'll be shining a light on the unique struggles single parents face and cover the aspects of being a single parent that are often overlooked and left unspoken. I'll be sharing actionable steps to help you overcome these challenges and find more calm and fulfillment in your life. Single Parent Reset is your weekly opportunity to gain a fresh perspective, take back control, and feel more in charge of your journey. This week, I was so happy to be joined by Sarah Pike, who is a divorce and breakup specialist. And we had, honestly, such a nice conversation, talking all things about divorce and separation and what it actually really means, what we go through, and more importantly, how to actually get yourself through it. Sarah was brilliant. She gave so many practical tips and advice for you that you could take away and start helping you if you really are struggling going through divorce or still trying to get over your separation. Have a listen now. Can't wait to hear what you think. Well, Sarah Pike, welcome to Single Parent Reset.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, I'm glad that you've come along today to talk all about everything you're doing in the world of divorce, which I know is relevant for many single parents who part of their journey to single parenthood, most likely for a lot of them, will have actually been through divorce, or maybe they're still going through divorce. So what I'd love for you to do at the very start is please just introduce yourself. Tell the listeners a bit about you and what you do.
Well, I am Sarah Pike and my specialist area is breakup and divorce coaching. The reason why is I went through my own horrific divorce about 11 years ago and it was a very, very tough time. I had real sort of range of mental health issues because the initial feelings weren't dealt with. And it was only from experiencing my own coaching that I realised how transformational that could be, which is exactly why my coaching practice was born. So I help people through all stages of breakup and divorce, whether I actually help people stay together as well. I've got resources that take you through sort of a 12-week period of trying to work out if it's going to work or not. And then also all the way through, mediation, arbitration, family court, and also redesigning your future to go forwards as well. So I work with different organisations as well. I work with law firms, HR and employment services. I've got one-to-one private clients, and I also do workshops and courses. So it's busy, but it's good.
Busy, but God, that's amazing. God, it sounds like you've got a lot. I like how you're kind of touching all points. You're doing the one-to-one, but also partnering with the law firms. And in what way actually do you partner with the law firms? How does that work?
Yeah, so I work very closely alongside mediators. So at the moment, the family laws recently changed and they're trying to keep a lot of cases out of the family courts as much as possible. There's also a £500 grant now from the government for people to start off mediation. So they're really encouraging that side of things. Obviously, divorce comes with a huge range of emotions that, vary from extreme upset, extreme anger, extreme despair. Every sort of feeling goes right out and becomes very extreme. As we all know, it's not an easy process. It's known as the second most stressful life event that can happen in our world, only next to the death of a loved one. So it's right up there with a traumatic experience. And what I found was I attended the International Family Law Conference earlier this year. And what I found with legal professionals is that a lot of their clients were leaning on them quite heavily for emotional support, whereas the legal professionals aren't trained in supporting people emotionally. which is where I sort of saw a little bit of a gap there with my coaching services to be able to work alongside the legal profession to provide emotional support to their clients so that they can have more clarity when they're going to their appointments. You know, the emotions have been dialed down a little bit as much as it can. In sessions, we sort of approach different ways of looking at things. You know, is there a different viewpoint here? Can we, take the sting out of it a little bit so that people can get a lot more easier decision-making skills when they've got clarity around a situation. And that really helps the legal professionals to be able to do their job easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a common thing where obviously it's one of the things that if you are separating from someone, you need to start going through the motions of divorce, but you're still very raw at those early days. And even speaking about the ins and outs of it could be really hard to even see the wood from the trees and to understand what is logical, what is actually needed to be spoken about in divorce, and then also what isn't. And a lot of the time there's so much packed up in it all, it's hard to actually get that clarity. And I think that's such a brilliant resource that you're offering for people so that they can also not get ripped off as well, because the more time you're on the phone to your lawyer telling them, and then they did this and then how dare they, and all of these things, it's costing you money and it's getting you nowhere. So it's to be able to have that clarity going into it is such an essential thing, because like I said, you're at such a vulnerable point in your life. As you said, it's like the second most traumatic thing that could happen to you, and it's a really hard to be able to talk about what's going on. So to have that space, I think it's just brilliant. I think it's such a good such a good resource. And then I'm wondering, what are the kind of common challenges that people in those early days really have? Like, what are the really big barriers that they have to help them kind of move into the next stage of their life?
Well, it is, how long have we got? One of the main, it depends on what the situation is, and everyone's situation is different. However, most people's emotional systems are very similar. The way that we're all wired up is very similar. So for me, I approach whatever emotion is presenting itself, understanding how to settle that down even just a little bit. And I've got loads of different tools and techniques that I use for that, depending on what the individual is experiencing at the time. For example, it could be infidelity, it could be domestic abuse, which I'm also trained in supporting. It could just be that two people have grown apart. There's been quite an increase recently with elderly people divorcing in their late 60s and 70s. So it really depends on the structure of the separation. Often it is people come to the coaching services because they don't know where else to turn. They're very upset. A lot of people are very distraught. It is sometimes comes as a really big shock to people, especially if they haven't instigated the divorce. It's not something that they saw coming, and that can be a real shock to the system, and also in the same sense as losing a loved one. You could lose a loved one in a car accident. You say goodbye to them in the morning and then don't ever come home again. And it's that similar set of circumstances when somebody all of a sudden finds out something and their reality of what they knew is no longer. And coming to terms with that is the same type of grieving process as when losing a loved one. And it's a real difficult mixture of emotions, the sadness, the grief, the denial, depression, loss. So it's really, for my work on my side of it, is having people understand that it's okay to feel that way.
Yeah.
Informing them that it is, I'll say it again, the second most stressful life event next to the death of a loved one. People don't generally know that, and they're thinking, I've been through separations before. I was absolutely fine when I separated from whoever, this ex was, oh my gosh, but people's lives are turned inside out. This is not something that's, when there's children involved, the whole system becomes disjointed. Everything does, the home, the car, if you've got one, dual income becomes single income. How are we going to manage? How am I going to manage, obviously, fuel bills, cost of living crisis at the moment, all of the things that were secure because you had a dual life with someone now become all reliant on yourself. And there's worry, the fear, It's like I mean, we all know the feeling, you know, I've been there myself, as have you. So, you know the feeling of the bottomless pit where something comes out from the bottom of your stomach, and it is horrible. You know, it's awful. So it's trying to have people understand that those emotions are valid. The emotions are absolutely valid, but it's also how to keep it tamed and turn the emotional dial down when you can. It's not always easy. And, you know, some people can be quite self-sabotaging as well, you know, and, you know, the thought loop that kicks in. I know we were talking earlier just about, you know, the normal conversations within yourself, normal questions that come up. I can't believe they would do that. Oh my God, what have they done? Oh my God, our family life. Oh my God, what about the kids? The kids would hate them. I hate them. What about our family's plans? It goes on and on and on. So it's that understanding that is not going to do you any good is sort of what I help with as well, because I don't know what you may know about the brain, but your brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and not real. The narrative and the stories that you tell yourself become accepted by your subconscious. So if you're, you know, obviously you don't feel great when I don't think anybody goes through a divorce and say, yeah, oh my God, it's been the best day of my life. It's not, it doesn't, I don't know anybody that's felt like that. So, but what I do know is that the stories we tell ourselves can really define the feeling of where we are at that moment in time. And we don't have to, you know, be so self-damning as we can be. And giving yourself a bit of leeway to feel the feelings, you know, self-forgiveness for feeling the feelings and acceptance of the situation that you're in can really help.
I think acceptance is a really big one that I talk about, because I think the sooner you can get to that point of accepting this is where we are at, it's happened, there's no going back, the sooner you can move forward. And I think the sooner you can get there and stop blaming yourself, stop blaming others, the sooner you can actually start taking action and doing the things for you and your family that are going to progress you. It won't be in the way that you ever thought it would be. It's the acceptance of it that's so key. Like, I think it's so important, but it's getting there. It's the getting there, and that's where you come in to help. To get there, to help do that, because there's a lot of emotions to weigh, and it is wading through them. And I think also, similarly, like you said, to grief, because you're grieving, you know, not just the life you had, you're also grieving the whole life you expected to be having. Like everything you expected for you and your children in the future is now ripped from you completely. It's gone. So it's grieving that, and that can rear its head like years down the line. Sometimes it can come up and rear its head, and you're revisiting these old emotions again. Which is why it's really good if you can do the work. The sooner you can do it and get those tools and techniques that you teach your clients, the sooner when they do rear their head, because they will, it's natural in years to come, they don't send you in a spiral. You can bounce back quicker from these setbacks that will naturally happen. I think,
And as well, it's a good point you made there, because every single one of us has our own coping mechanisms, and that's all based on how you were brought up and what you saw and what you've been influenced by in your life, and even things that have happened to you in your teenagers. You might be in your 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. But when the divorce happens, it can bring all sorts of previous traumatic. And I mentioned divorce, and by the way, anybody that's listening, it's an umbrella term for me rather than saying breakup, separation, or divorce. So I just use divorce. It's not just for legal separations. But anyway, you know, that when that happens, it can literally regurgitate all sorts of traumatic memories that have impacted you over the years. And it is that acceptance, but also it's a lot of the things that you may not have healed previously. And that's not always to do with, you know, you didn't go to therapy or you didn't take counseling. You know, some of those things can be dealt with in coaching as well. So it's you know, it does cover a lot of aspects, but it is that coming to accept where you're at. And it's really, really tough, because the person who you said I do to, you don't think you're going to say I don't to. And you know, that's the very last thing that most of us would have ever wanted. Even in the end of it, you know, I've been in relationships that were, domestic abuse. I've been in financial abuse, all sorts of different things. But you stay with the person for longer than you possibly should have done. Every situation's different, but because you want to make it work, and that's natural as well. So there's also the feeling of foolishness that people can present, that people can come with. I feel like such a fool. I can't believe they would do this to me. I've stuck it out for however long. But it all comes down to how you as an individual are made up based on your life's experiences as to how you deal with something that presents itself in later life as well.
Yeah. And one thing I think a lot of people look back and there's two things really. There's one, it can rewrite history for you almost, because with the facts you presented within the present makes you look back at the past, think, was everything a lie, or was everything not how I thought it was? What that can also happen. And then the other thing, I've forgotten, it will come back to me. No, I think it's gone. But yeah, so that can happen, which can, it can be really hard. Then your identity of what you thought you were, even then, everything, it just can throw you into an absolute spin. And identity is a really big piece that can feel like it's just flung out the window when you go through a separation like this. And I'm wondering what tools and techniques do you have when you speak to your clients if they're struggling with identity, and what even this means for them and themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, your identity when you're with somebody long term and you've chosen to spend your life together, whether you're legally married or not, you become one of the same, don't you? You two symbiosis. So separating that is really tough. That's something that people do really, really struggle with. Now, what do I do now? Because you're so used to the routine, everything's taken from you. Who'd you phone? Where's the person gone? They're not there anymore. You've got to really rebuild everything. I work alongside lots of different coaches, and I've sort of built a framework of my own. So rebuild the self-identity and self-confidence. We rediscover personal goals and values, things that you might have left by the wayside. Your partner, you might not have had time when you were with someone to really go for something that you were interested in studying. You might have always wanted to set up a new business. You might have had a hobby that you wanted to explore. What are your values? Did your own personal values really fully align with your partner? Because we all sort of take a little bit of ourselves and push it to the side to be able to be with another person, because not two people are the same. We're not going to be two shapes that fit together perfectly. We have to, compromise along the way. So, what are your values? We look at that type of thing. Self-care and confidence building techniques. A lot of people really struggle with taking care of themselves because they feel so low. And even simple things like, writing a gratitude journal on an evening, saying some simple affirmations on a morning. A lot of people that come to me in the beginning, especially, there was one lady that had been going through a divorce for 4 years. And she'd been dragged through the family court, bless her, and she just had lost all energy and all spark, and she just was finding it really hard to get herself in the shower after she dropped the kids off at school. So we did a very simple exercise which just said, right, get in the shower before you go to bed, and wash your hair and dry your hair before you go to bed. And that then, and simple things like fold your clothes that you're going to wear the next day. As soon as you get out of bed, put them on. And tiny little things for people that are at this point of emotional upheaval start to make them feel a bit better. Because then obviously when she's got the kids to school and comes back home, she's ready for the day. So then you put something else in, like meet a friend for coffee, or go to Tesco or whatever shop that you go to, and go and get a little shop, or go for a coffee, take yourself out for coffee, get confident being on your own. So there's things like that, overcoming the fear and self-doubt as well. A lot of people are like, I can't live life on my own. Well, you managed before you met your ex-partner. Remember who you were before you met the person that you've now separated from, because, you've managed to get this far. A lot of people think that they can't do specific things. And, I'll say to them, well, oh, I can't choose a car. So, well, have you ever had cars before when you were with your partner? Yes, of course I did. Well, so you can choose a car. Really, and this is what I mean about the narrative that you tell yourself. I can't do this, I can't do that. You believe that. But it's really simple things within coaching sometimes. Obviously, it's a range, but when you're rediscovering yourself and building the self-identity up again, it's actually more simple than you would imagine, because we overcomplicate everything a lot of the time, and we don't need to. And if you can make it as simple as possible, make it easy, then your body will react to that more naturally, because it's at that time in a real fight and flight mode. You know, it's struggling, it's in shock, it freezes up, it's awful. So whatever you can do to make it easy, just to gently take the edge off, you know, you can really start to create a new vision for your future and see a bit of hope and light at the end of the tunnel, which, as we both know, is there and it does exist.
It is there,
and at time you don't see it.
Yeah, no, it totally is there. And I love the idea of it, because really it does go back to, in those early days, simple things like having a shower or your skincare routine, putting makeup on, things like that. Maybe that would have been things you would have done all the time before, but you can just start telling yourself, what's the point? I don't need to. And then you go through the school run, you feel awful, you don't want to speak to anyone. And it can be very quickly that you go into that spiral. So, and it may seem as simple as just putting your moisturizer on every day, but actually it's a lot more than that. It means that you're showing that you care for yourself, and it's really important.
Absolutely.
And then also for the things where you've always told yourself, oh, that wasn't me, that was the ex-partner's job. One, you can always ask for help to like get it done. It's like something that you can do, and there's no shame in asking for help. And yes, sometimes the barrier to asking for the help when it comes to certain tasks is because it's a further step away from the life you had, and it's a further step into accepting that person's no longer there and I need someone else to do it. The other thing is doing it yourself, and I promise you, when you do things yourself that you haven't done before, oh my God, will it lift you for the week? Like the week, I remember my one of my windows was broken, and I was like, I'm gonna have to get like, someone to fix that. What am I gonna do? And then I got the toolbox out and I fixed it. I fanfared that for a week. I was telling all my friends, I was sending pictures on the WhatsApp, and they were like, she's lost the plot. But I was like, this is the best thing ever. And it really does, if you push yourself to do it and recognize that you can do those things. And it's actually, you realize how much more you're capable of when you have to do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it is celebrate the small wins, because there's enough negativity going on in your world at that time, to celebrate the small ones. And then you realize, actually, like, I can do a hell of a lot more than I used to think I used to give myself credit for. And then when you get that little bit, then you're like, oh, do you know what? I'm going to try that one as well. And then I'm going to try that one as well. And maybe then you'll go too far and you'll break a plumbing pipe or something.
Yeah.
You need to get the specialists in. But
at
least you can give yourself the chance to rebuild that confidence, and then your narrative starts to change again, because it goes from I can't to I can. Oh, look, I've done. And naturally it happens because you've got visual proof that you've done something.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, if it doesn't work, not being hard on yourself. Yeah, and if it doesn't work, not being hard on yourself, and then going to like, well, this is that person's fault because if they were here, they would have done it. And it's so easy to go down that route and blaming like small like inconveniences on your situation. It's just been like, no, this is what's happened. It's nothing to do with them anymore because they're not here. Yeah. This is on me to sort out now.
And that's your self-awareness as well. And that's one of the things, if I do my workshops, that's one of the things that comes up really soon at the beginning. It's for things like slide 3. Self-awareness is key. Because if you aren't aware of yourself, the narratives that you've got, the internal narrative, the stories you tell yourself, the thought loop that you've got creating, it's really interesting when you start to do active self-awareness, and anyone can do it at any time. All you do is just ask yourself, or what you do is you identify something that's happened. So say, for example, someone pulled out quicker in a junction and you got annoyed. Instead of being annoyed, notice the emotion change, notice it happen, and just sit with it for a moment and think to yourself, ooh, that's interesting. Where did that come from? Why is that there? Does that mean that doesn't mean anything? Doesn't mean that the world's a bad place just because, I feel sorry for them that they are in such a rush and so stressed out that they had to behave like that. It's not on me. It's when you make other things mean something that are completely unrelated to your reality, that you then buy into that, and it's all the external attachments to something else that, if you struggling with a Phillips or a flathead screwdriver and you can't make it work or whatever, and it's something that you haven't done before, your ex-partner, like you say, used to do it all the time. It's their fault they're not here. It's their fault they had the affair and now I'm left here in this all by myself. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not at all. It's not their fault that you are sat there like that. At this point in time, that is your set of circumstances.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really make a difference what has happened to get you there, because at that point in time, that is where you're at. And that is the self-acceptance and self-awareness as well. That is, really key.
Yeah, I think, you said it so well. I think I could not agree more. And I'm wondering as well, so for all of the listeners on this, they're all single parents. Obviously, parent is in the name, kids. So it can be so emotionally charged when kids are involved and you're going through divorce. And what would you have? What is the kind of the biggest mindset? Oh my God, mindset shift. There we go, got there. Could have gone wrong. For people who are dealing with an ex-partner, trying to deal with kids and everything in between, co-parenting, what are your top tips?
Well, if I had a solution to co-parenting nightmares, we'd all be millionaires. But, and this again is another tricky subject because every single person is different and every divorce or separation is different. Unfortunately, when there are children involved, we can't get rid of our exes. It's not one of those ones where it's like, oh God, that person that I was with all them many moons ago, that doesn't happen. You do have that ex still present in your life. There are some strategies for being able to deal with this if they are being tricky. Keep everything on email, keep everything recorded, and if anything gets too difficult, there are apps online and resources that you can access and work with. For example, our Family Wizard. No, I am not on commission, but it's one that I signpost a lot of my clients to, and it essentially is a recording tool for WhatsApps, texts, calls, emails, and keeps everything logged so that, like, for example, if an ex-partner writes a message to say, fine, I'll pick up little Gary at 5 p.m. at whatever shop that we always do. And then you say, right, great, perfect, I'll see you there. You turn up at 5 p.m. with little Gary at the shop. He's not there or she's not there. And they turn around and say, well, I don't know what you're talking about, because they deleted the message or they edit the message or something can be changed. Or, there's anything that's not sort of insured in this type of way where it's recorded can be changed, anything can be amended. I also learned at the International Family Law Conference that, oh my gosh, I didn't even know these apps existed, but you can create text messages and create WhatsApp messages to look like it's come from a certain telephone number that aren't real at all. And they can do it. This is all obviously with the coercive control and more domestic abuse relationships that I work with. And that's where this type of program or platform, our Family Wizard would come in useful for that, because that there is necessary. Mindset shifts otherwise, where it comes to difficult ex-partners, is sort of not my circus, not my monkeys. It's like, thank God I don't have to be involved in that anymore. Thank heaven that this is not my circus anymore, and someone else can deal with that person and their tricky ways. And also, as well, this is another acceptance. You just have to accept that person is as they are, and they're never going to change. And there's a whole thing called, everyone's talking about parallel parenting at the moment, and letting that person do whatever they want to do at that time. But you can't control other people. And this is something that, even though you have the best interests of the child at heart, and you will do the right thing in your way. And yes, when you hand them over, the ex may not do things the same. And you may think that they're doing that to upset you or, to niggle you, to do it on purpose, to get a reaction. But it's up to you what you do with that internally. And this is, again, self-awareness. What's triggering for you? What's coming up with this? You know, is this something that was a pattern in the relationship all along? Is this something that used to happen often? If so, then why are you surprised? You know, and be quite tough with yourself, because otherwise you're going to get engaged in the whole, oh, I can't believe they're doing this again. And then there's your narrative, you know, you back off on a negative spiral. So it's keeping everything very objective, and you sort of have to go out of your own self to be able to do this.
Yeah.
It's very important to remain objective as and where you can. I'm very aware that that's not easy when you're with somebody that is, you know, obviously known which buttons to press. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in a situation of being a single parent.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And I hear a really common phrase I hear with the clients I work with is that they're using the kids to get to me. It's a really, really common one. And I think it's a really hard one because, again, it's the behaviors may present themselves in that way, but it's like, yes, they are behaving that way, but a lot of the time they're not even thinking about you. It's not to do with you, or you're letting that. Again, it's that narrative. You're building that narrative of they're using the kids to get to you. And again, it's reframing it as to, you know, you've moved on. This is what's happening. What are you going to do with it? Rather than going back into those old passions that you would have had with that person and all of those things. Yeah.
It's not easy to do. You know, I mean, even I get myself caught up in things, and my divorce was 11 years ago, you know, ish.
Yeah.
And even I can get myself caught up in that narrative. You know, and that, but I catch myself and I'll think, oh, it's fine. You know, the people move on in their own lives. They might have new partners to deal with. You know, they might have new members of the family. You know, they might have welcomed in new children with their new partner. They've got different dynamics compared to what it was. As how it will be now. So yeah, that's really important. I think when it comes to co-parenting as well, it's really being able to handle the communication effectively with the co-parent, and you will also know what triggers them as well, because you've had such a intense relationship more often than not. So you know, just don't trigger them. Don't say things. It's very simple. You know what will and won't get a response in a negative way. Don't do it. You know, just be real. And also create a parenting time schedule, you know, and just, you know, do like a shared doc online, like an Excel document, or, you know, there'll be plenty of apps online as well. I think Amicable have one. You know, that's a real great platform to use as well. So there are things out there. It's just not always easy. But I think as long as you remain child focused and keep the communication effective rather than looking for a reaction, that's probably the best advice I can give on that.
Yeah, I think communication is key. And you said there, you know, you're so many years past it, but it's still something you need to revisit. And I think that's the thing. It's not just a one and done thing. Okay, I'm over it. That's it. We're laughing now. You're kind of co-parenting that person for the rest of your life. So I always think when my son has kids, I'll be co-grandparenting. You know, so okay, and it goes that far. So it's like they're going to be in your life no matter what. So it's making it whatever it looks like for you, but making it so that you can protect your energy in that dynamic and how it's going to work. I think is key. And revisiting it and checking if something didn't work. You know, looking what didn't work, what can be done better. Be that with the co-parent, that conversation, or just a conversation for yourself that you're having and revisiting things. I think it's really important to be having those.
Yeah, wouldn't agree more.
And what about, because obviously divorce, sometimes the stories could be juicy, there can be scandal, there can be all sorts, and it can feel like the whole world is talking about you, or everyone suddenly is piling in with their opinions. What advice have you got for this?
What, when it arms and legs? Everything arms and legs.
Yeah.
Ignore it. Absolutely ignore it. You don't have to justify yourself to anyone. And you know your truth. There's only 3 versions of this: your version, their version, and then the one in the middle. And that's it. And you know, some people go on the smear campaign and others don't. The best advice I can give is to just close ranks. Yeah, absolutely close ranks. Don't react to people who are talking about things that they have no idea about. You know, the amount of rumors that I've heard about myself. I had a separation last year, and I was living at the time in a very close-knit community, shall we say, that would be representative of an ITV drama around about 7 p.m. that is in the countryside.
Yeah.
And the amount of rumors I heard about myself and, messages that I would get about like, oh my God, I heard this and da, 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 da. Not my circus, not my monkeys, not interested. I'm not interested in listening to it, reacting to it, responding to it. You lose friends. Sometimes it can become very lonely. I certainly lost friends in both separations of mine, the divorce and the significant separation last year. And for me, it actually at the time I was like, again, I can't believe these people would be like that. I can't believe they would say that. But then it wasn't long before I would sort of, I don't know what it was, just something inside me kicked in. It must have been, with my coaching skills, but it was very, very quick that it changed from, I can't believe that they would be like that to, oh, okay, so that's how they are. And there's the mindset shift, because people will show you their true colors when you are going through your toughest times. And the people who come close are the people that you keep, and the people that you all of a sudden you thought they were close, but then it becomes debatable. Don't even entertain them, because your peace of mind should not have to even deal with something like that at the time that you're going through a really difficult separation. And whatever people want to say is up to them, and they really need to get a life. I think that when it comes to things like that, you've got to pity the people that do the gossiping, and you've got to pity the people that have that inclination to talk about somebody else's personal business when they know nothing about it at all. When I work with clients towards at the beginning, really, and this type of thing comes in all the time. People do lose friends, they do lose communities, and the people that they once relied upon. So we have a thing that when I was training, that would be called the breakup support team. So it's just basically your key people that you get around you. So you get the friend that you would go to the gym with, or the friend that you would go for a walk with, the friend that you go and do something silly with, the friend that comes around and just watches Netflix and has a good cup of hot chocolate, then you've got your financial advisor, your lawyer, your coach, your PT, all these, the key people who you can trust. I seem to remember like donkeys years ago when I lived in London, Kate Moss had separated from someone, and I remember like reading Heat or Grazia or something like that, and because this was before the days of social media, and someone had said that Kate will be fine because she has a fortress of friends around her, and I love that phrase. Get your fortress of friends in place, and just really protect your energy and protect your emotion, because otherwise, everyone's got a certain set of energy each day, and trying to combat the unending and endless amount of opinion as opposed to just dealing with facts will just drain your energy each day. And you've got to really take care of it to be able to get you through the separation. They aren't important, they're irrelevant to your situation.
Yeah, I think, and it goes back to really focusing on what's important right now, because right now, as you've mentioned, every aspect of your life has just been it's changing. So you are dealing with the admin and the emotional toll, and dealing with your children, just making sure that they're okay as well. So on top of all of that, you just don't need to be looking outwards. Look inwards into your family unit, your setup, and what's working for you guys, and focus on rebuilding your life, because that in itself, what you're doing, is so much energy is being taken up by it. So do not give any of that energy to other things, because it's just a waste. And sometimes it can be avoidance behavior as well. Sometimes you don't want to face the facts of all the things you need to do, so it's easier to let your mind just focus on all these like petty things. But no, it's important to really focus on what's important for you. And as I've mentioned there, so like we've said it a few times now, that everything is thrown up in the air. And I know you're coming out with a course soon that will be for people going through divorce. So do you want to talk through what that is and how it'd be useful for someone who is on the cusp of launching into the abyss?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, like I've also said a couple of times, I've had my own experience of divorce, and more recently, it was a very, very difficult separation. and that was when my son was living with, we were all living together. So my son in his mind had a fatherly figure. So all of this, the single parentdom comes in again. Now I knew I'd been through divorce, but I'd actually, in a way, it's come at a good time because of what business I do. But it definitely reminded me and gave me a good kick up the backside about how severe the emotions really are. So this comes from a situation personally of being less than a year old, and I can't stand to think of people out there that are going through similar things that I have recently been through with no support. I don't want to think of people crying on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m. hoping that they will just stop crying because their throat is so sore and aching from being so emotional. So I looked into, what is it that we really need through this time? Because like I say, the advice is out there, what to do for a divorce. You go to a lawyer, you need financial advice. Where is the emotional support? Yes, there are divorce coaches. Sometimes to do that one-to-one is quite expensive. Some fees are very high, some retainers are very high. Individuals might not at the time, like if you've got an appointment that you've got your one-to-one, you might not want to attend it because something might have just flown you that day. You might just feel like crap and you don't want to get up that day. And then if you miss that appointment, you feel guilty. So you won't reschedule it. And then your support's gone as well. So I thought, what can I do to help people that can access it at all times? So I've created an online divorce coaching program. The full program is the emotionally intelligent divorce. So this covers all angles where it's like a one-stop shop. It's got 6 modules in and it's all self-led, and it's not an achievement at the end or anything like that. It's all support resources and all support materials. So module 1 is understanding divorce and emotional resilience. So it covers the emotional impact. And we do this at the beginning because then it sets you up for the second one, which is the legal and financial preparation. Because if you go straight into that without being able to manage emotions successfully, or at least in a more positive way than you currently are, you're just going to struggle. So start off with the emotions, then go into legal and financial prep. Then module 3, I've got communication and conflict resolution. So this is where the effective communication with your ex-partner comes in. Assertiveness versus aggression. It's ways that you might write an email, that there are resources in there that you can download email and text templates for difficult conversations. There's co-parenting and child well-being in module 4. All types of different resources with the co-parent agreement templates, which come in really handy, that outline shared responsibilities. Module 5 is this is where we get into the good stuff about ourselves, so this is rebuilding the self-identity and confidence. And that's where you get into what we talked about earlier, the personal goals, values, self-care, create a vision for the future. This is a lot more with like guided meditations, walking meditations, helpful things to really get into what you want to do and how you want to feel. And then module 6 is moving forward and life after divorce, which is much more, transformational coaching techniques and how to really move forward with it. So it goes from the real sort of nitty-gritty emotional side of things where you really need that support, to understanding all of the legal processes and how to deal with your ex-partner, because it gets really rocky out there. It can become very toxic. So if we can sort of get this process addressed in a different way, that's my aim. Like, my mission is to help people just navigate this process without the venom, without the toxicity, without the difficulty, without the resentment. If it's happening, it's happening. Let's get it done. Let's get it kicked off and let's move on. Even if you're having to co-parent, let's move on. Let's just crack on, because it's not good for our systems to do that. So that's the main program. Then I also have toolkit editions, which is basically all the different types of resources that come in the full pack, but can be bought in different smaller chunks.
Oh, I like that. So if you're thinking, I understand divorce, I get, I've done the bits at the start, but actually it's this path forward. What's that look like? So you can buy like little bits for that.
Yeah, and
Oh,
it's
that's really good. Yeah.
yeah, and because I want to be able to, help the people that need it all, but then also, just have some bits where you can dip in and out of, like a pick and mix.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant.
wherever you're at, there's tools there for them.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And then one thing that I always think about, because I'm really passionate about this aspects of the work that I do, is obviously divorce really impacts your whole life. And a really big place that we spend so much of our time is in the workplace.
Mm.
And how can workplaces support people who are going through divorce so that it isn't stigmatized? They're actually being given, yeah, I'll let you talk through like what are things that they can do? Because already I'm like about to say them all. Like, no, you tell me.
Yeah, well, I think that, the work that you do around single parent support in the workplace, it aligns fully with my divorce in the workplace
Mm-hmm.
because, one impacts the other, doesn't it, directly? I think at the moment, people in the work area, employers, HR directors, business owners of organizations, whatever, are starting only very early days, starting to appreciate the importance of this type of support. It's
Yeah.
not really been out there before.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a very sort of typically British, well, shut up and get on with it, so and so did it, oh, it's happened to me, blah, 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 blah. But we know now that life isn't like that. We don't bear well with ticky boxes, black and white. It's not like that. It's a whole range. The spectrum's huge, and feelings are feelings, and they're not going to go away. So
Yeah.
for me personally, I'm tapping into the HR departments. Like I said, I can do workshops in offices for different sort of areas of the teams. You can have, the senior management team, how to spot the signs of domestic abuse, how to spot the signs of divorce as well, because people might be sleeping in their cars because they don't want to go home. So might be coming in the same clothes next day. They might look a bit disheveled, might look tired, even sort of a vague smell of alcohol, but they haven't really been drinking before. Different characteristics of the dynamics of the individual are, but it's educating the actual organizations and the people who work there to be able to accept it and understand what it is as well, because it is a subject where people don't know how to approach or how to talk about it. So with my work, can leave tips on sentences to use or approaches and how to approach a subject. Is everything okay? We've got this because I'm really sort of keen on trying to implement a divorce policy within the workplace. Like, what is divorce policy? What do you do when someone comes to you and tells you they're going through a divorce? Because with my personal research that I've done, I've spoke to numerous HR companies, and I think all of them, I don't think any of them, in fact, have said that they signpost to coaching, they signpost to counselling. Now, counselling's great, it has its place. I've had it myself for various reasons, but it's not necessarily what people need when they're going through a divorce. And that's where coaching really kicks in, because it's a different approach. It deals with where you are now and where you're going to go, not where you are now because of what's happened. That's a different way of looking at therapy and counselling to coaching. So it's educating the people within the organisations and within the workplace of what divorce really does. Because like I said, people don't really know that it's the second most stressful life event.
Yeah.
I think that in itself, when people hear that, it's quite, it takes them by surprise, and that really hits home. And then it's how can you support your staff members? So flexi working hours, because childcare might have changed, that being able to understand that they're going through the family court system at the moment. So they're going to need to take time off. Don't make them take it out of the holidays. Can we please have some compassionate leave for this? It's the fourth major life event, if you think about it. It's births, you get your maternity or paternity, deaths, compassionate leave.
Yeah.
People get married, but they can go off on honeymoon or whatever. They might get a bonus. And I was in a contract once, so I got a bonus if I got married. I was like, why? But then a divorce, there aren't really any support places or support mechanisms in place, and it's both major life events. So things really do need to change. And I do think that people are starting to kind of listen, but they're not paying enough attention to it, given the fact that in divorce, there's 42% on average, unfortunately, of marriages, they end, and the first marriages end, and that only increases at second and third marriages.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's going to go away. If people have got more choices now, people don't need to stay together. The old traditional sense of marriage isn't necessary. They've got choices, but as well, the emotional toll that comes with it is still just as high. So if employers aren't listening to this and taking it seriously, they'll lose staff. Yeah, and your staff retention is going to go. You might have had a really great member of staff that's been with you for 15 years, has come all the way through the ranks, and one of your best managers now. And then they go through a divorce, can't come into work. They really struggle, because you do. And it can take sometimes 3 years plus the year before, when it's all starting to fail. You get it off when the divorce is happening. Then finally you've got it through, and then it can be another few years after that. If you don't support those people at the beginning, you might lose that member of staff. Think of the amount that it's going to cost to train a new person, find a new person first.
Yeah.
Maintain that person second. Retrain that person. It costs thousands to businesses, and lost revenue in not being able to focus, lack of productivity, all sorts. So being able to sort of either do workshops, for me personally, I do retainers with companies so that they can, have me on call type thing. So once a month, I can either go in and do a workshop, or if it's like a certain amount of hours.
Yeah.
So it can be made into any sort of package that they want, whether it's one-to-one sessions that they need, or whether they just want to refresh, keep up to date with what's going on, like the non-court dispute resolution. I mentioned earlier, keep up to date with the fact of it's a fact of your life right now that people in your business are going to go through this. Why wouldn't you want to be informed?
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think, I really, really think the work that you're doing there is brilliant, because I think organizations, it's on them, because I mean, if they want to retain their staff, or they want to be supportive and really enhance their well-being policies, I think it's like you said, it's guaranteed to happen to a significant number of your staff members. So have the support in place. Yeah, I could not agree more. I'm extremely passionate about making workplaces just a better place for people going through these life events. I think it's so key.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sarah, this has just been, I'm loving this, and I could talk to you for days and days, as we did speak last week when we were like, oh, we've run out of time. But what I would love to ask from you now is, if there's someone listening today and they're just in that very beginning stages of divorce, that maybe that first year, and they just feel like they don't know how to put the next foot forward, what advice would you have for them to help them get through the next few months?
Take it very slowly and be very kind to yourself. And please do not think that this is going to stay the same forever, because it won't. One of my favorite phrases, the only thing that never changes is that everything always changes. Nothing stays the same. And I guarantee that, because that example that I gave earlier about thinking of people crying on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m, wishing it would just stop because your throat was aching from all of the hours of crying, was me. And I thought that it was just never going to stop. And life changes. It's not forever. The divorce, it will happen. Things happen. Life is not a hug factory. But it can be kind in the future. So, whatever people need, just take their own time and listen to your intuition. Really pay attention to what your inner self is telling you to do, and try and stay calm as well. Try and stay off alcohol.
Sick of things.
I think I lost myself in many bottles of wine when I was going through my divorce, and it doesn't do you any favors at all. It brings your mood down. You make rash decisions. You send stupid text messages, and you will just regret it. Take care of yourself. Really take care of yourself. And if you can, access coaching, but not everybody can, which is why, obviously, like I said earlier, I've done those smaller toolkit editions if anybody ever needed just some guidance, get on my website and just send me a message. I'm here to help people. That's my mission. So, if anybody needs anything at all, please do get in touch.
Yeah. And I'll add your details into the show notes as well, so people can access your website. And then my last question for you is, what's the best thing about having been through divorce for you?
Finding myself again, being me, and really loving being alive and being in my world and recreating my world. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, I know it may sound, for someone who's in it right now, it may sound like such a far-fetched thing, but really it will be the making of you. I know you'll be thankful that it even happened, because you never would have got to this point now that you will get to had you not been through it.
Yeah. Absolutely. If I'd have heard someone say that at the time when I was crying on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m, I would have been, yeah, it's all right for you. Yeah, you're not going through what I'm going through. You don't know how this feels. But believe me, I do. And believe me, you will get through it. That's the most important thing. But yeah, it's just being me, being a present mum, having the best relationship with my son, because no one's distracting me. I'm not worrying. I'm not panicking. I know that everything's right. I'm in control. I'm the one that's in charge of everything that I do. I don't have to ask anyone what kettle I'm going to buy. Things like that. It's all up to me. So there are a lot of positives on the other side of separation.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Sarah, this has been brilliant. There's been such good practical advice for people in this episode. And thank you so much for coming along and sharing your story and the work that you do.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really grateful.
I mean, I could have kept that conversation going for hours with Sarah. She was just brilliant. Her tips were absolutely spot on, and I just loved her outlook on everything when it came to divorce and separation. So if you want to know more about her, she's at sarahpikecoaching.com. Go check out her website. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Single Parent Reset. If you're interested in working with me one-to-one, please go to my website, solacecoaching.com, for further details. And don't forget to follow my Instagram page at Solace Coaching for more insightful content on living a life to be proud of as a single parent. As always, if you find this episode useful, please share with your friends and family. Remember, many single parents may seem like they have it all together, but this could be exactly what they need to help them move forward today.